you are good to go.
Awesome. So hello, everybody. Hello, Word Uppers, and welcome to October Word Up Online. We of Word Up acknowledge that some of us are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe and Huron-Wendat people. Word Up is dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. So today we have Samantha M. Bailey and Amy Stewart, who are both thriller authors. So I'm thrilled to hear both of you guys. We're starting off with Amy Stewart, who is the #1 best-selling author of 3 novels, Still Mine, Still Water, and Still Here. There's kind of a theme going on here. Shortlisted for the Arthur Ellis Best First Novel Award, and winner of the 2011 Writers Union of Canada Short Fiction Competition. Amy's writing has previously appeared in newspapers and magazines across Canada. In 2012, Amy completed her MFA in creative writing through the University of British Columbia. She lives in Toronto with her husband and her 3 sons. And you will find some links to connect with her on our website. But here we are right now online. Everybody, Amy Stewart.
Yay, thank you. So I just say that when I'm doing Zoom, my new thing now is that I hide my self view. So I can't see myself because it's like a thing, like some sort of like narcissist thing where I can't, I have a really hard time if my own face is talking back at me. I don't know, it messes with my like perception. So if I somehow disappear, Colleen, maybe just like give me a panicked wave because I can't, like I said, see myself. So yes, as Linda said, I am the author of 3 books. They're behind me. Still Mine is the first one that came out in 2016. Still Water is the what I call sequel of sorts, which means that I wrote it as a sequel, but it can be read on its own. We were very sort of careful to ensure that it could be read as a standalone. And then Still Here is the same. It's the 3rd book in the series, also readable as a standalone. But if you've got time on your hands, I would definitely recommend starting at the beginning and reading your way through. I don't know if anybody in the group is affiliated or has ever done the Muskoka Novel Marathon. No? Or you know about it? So the Muskoka Novel Marathon takes place in Huntsville every July, and it's been going on for at least 15 years. It's a weekend writing marathon, and they did it virtually this year, but otherwise it's always been done in person at sort of changing sites in around Huntsville. And it's a full weekend, so Friday, and then it was to Sunday, and then they changed it Friday to Monday. And you basically you raise money for a literacy foundation, and you write as much as you can in a weekend. So I did it a few times over the years, and then in 2010 I did it, and you're only allowed to bring like a page of notes on the first day. You have to start the novel that weekend. And so I had this idea about, a novel about a missing woman who sort of ends up looking for other missing women. And that was like pretty much the gist of the premise that I had, with a few ideas that maybe someone had hired her and she had a tenuous relationship with the person who hired her. And I banged out 50 pages, which sounds like a lot for a weekend, except there are people like the person who won. I just got the email, the press release. The person who won this year wrote like 80,000 words. Like when I read it, I was aghast. Like they wrote like a full 250 page novel in a weekend, which I don't even think I could do if I like drank Red Bull and just didn't stop typing. So I don't know how they did it, but anyway, But I wrote 50 pages, which I was proud of. And it was turns out, the first 50 pages of Still Mine. So at the end of the weekend, I sort of felt like I had never imagined that I would write a thriller. I'd always considered myself a sort of literary type writer. I was writing short stories, and I was at that point about 2 years away from finishing my master's degree. So, you know, in master's programs, it's like mostly people who are writing like poetry and short fiction. And but I felt like I really had something. So I sort of mulled it over for the rest of the summer. And then in early September, I found out that you enter your submission at the end of the weekend into a sort of contest. And it won. It won the fiction contest. So then I thought, okay, I have something. And the judge, was very supportive. So I asked my thesis advisor at UBC how she would feel about me writing a thriller, because people don't write thrillers for their master's thesis projects. And she was very receptive to it. So I was really lucky to sort of kill two birds with one stone. And then I got to finish Still Mine and get a master's thesis out of it. So I finished it, the first draft, around 2012. Late 2012. And then, you know, I was so naive and innocent then in terms of like thinking that I was close to being done, in terms of not realizing how not done you are when you have a first draft. So I was, again, lucky in that I had an agent at that point, and it went out on submission, and then it got picked up right away by Simon & Schuster, and then I went into edits, which lasted a long time. And I'm cutting out a lot of like toil. Obviously, I'm not going to bore you with the details of my like many months of trying to edit and get it up to snuff and rewrite it, and then submitting it and waiting for responses and the rejection and all that kind of stuff. But it was published, picked up, I think in 2014, and then published in 2016. And then, you know, publishers generally, if you're a thriller writer, would like you to write a book a year. Some people do that. I will never be able to do that. That is, I don't know. I mean, I guess people who write 80,000 words in a weekend can write a book a year, but that's not me. So I knew about 80 pages into writing Still Mine that Claire O'Day, who's the main character of all three books, that she has this really sort of dark and intense backstory where she, you know, you find out pretty early in the first book that she has escaped an abusive marriage, and she's on the run from that and has battled with addiction issues and all kinds of trauma. So when I was writing Still Mine, I understood pretty quickly that the book was, that her story wasn't going to be, her arc, you know, in writer speak, wasn't going to be able to be sort of meet its end in one book. So that I had a series on my hand, in my hands. And so when we went to Simon & Schuster, we were very lucky that they were open to that. And then it's just been, you know, like a wild ride. I wrote the next two books in about 18 months each, and they were published each 2 years, just a slightly over 2 years apart. And they've all done well. And now they're being developed for TV, which is fun and different and fantastic. Before I read, I'll just speak a little bit about my experiences in the past 6 months. So normally I'm the kind of person who tries to write every day. I don't put a huge ton of pressure on myself to write, you know, 1,000 words or like huge amounts every day. But I you know, I would say 1,000 words is about what I'm aiming for. And I'm pretty good about doing that 3, 4, 5 days a week, you know, sort of hitting like 10 to 15,000 words a month. And then I'll sort of stop and go back and edit and that kind of thing. But in the past 6 months, I have 3 kids, 3 boys. They're 9, 11, and 13. So obviously March, we were all stuck together with my husband and our dog in the same house. So, and then I just found what's been really interesting for me in the past 6 months has just been just dealing with this sort of mental fog too, of not only is your house all of a sudden really crowded and busy and the people are around all the time, but also trying to cope with, you know, this totally new normal and, you know, what's going to happen and what does this mean for us, and, you know, what even is a pandemic, and just adjusting to like going to the grocery store with a mask on and all that kind of stuff, that I really froze and was sort of unable to write for a while, which was really jarring for me and difficult because, you know, writing is a pretty big constant in my life and something that grounds me, that I sort of know I can do almost every day, that's there for me. It's creative, it's, you know, it's productive, and it sort of went away. And so eventually what I did, which is now part of the advice that I always give to writers, because I'm sure Samantha will agree, like you get this question a lot, you know, and Colleen as well, like when you're a writer, like basically just how do you do it? How do you sit down to do it? How do you motivate yourself? Or I can't get started. And so I started telling myself that I was going to write 100 words a day, and that's it. And that was the thing that finally worked, where I just kind of took all pressure off myself to be productive and to accomplish much. And then I was able to get back into a rhythm. And I found that if I took the pressure off myself to write prolifically and said, okay, just going to write 100 words a day, of course, if you sit down, you're going to write more than 100 words. So I'd usually hit, you know, more like 3 or 4, but sometimes I would only do like 140. And then it started to add up, and I sort of have found some kind of rhythm again. But it's been really instructive for me in the sense of, I think that I had a lot of parameters before on what my writing life needed to look like, in terms of, you know, the house has to be quiet and it should be morning. That's when I work best. And now I realize, like, I can't have those. I have to limit the number of ways that I'm sort of, you know, painting myself into a corner in terms of what I need my environment to look like to write. And I guess the only other thing I'll say is just that it's been, you know, with the series, you know, Samantha and I spoke briefly before this started about the community, the community, particularly of thriller writers in Toronto, and, you know, more specifically of women thriller writers, which is a relatively kind of new niche. And one thing that has been so lovely and surprising for me is just the depth of that community and the support, and sort of feeling that a rising tide raises all boats, and that you benefit from other people's successes. And that's just been so lovely to be part of that, and to be able to support other writers, but to also feel that support. That's been, I think, one of the biggest surprises about entering into the life of a published author, is just how open and kind so many of your fellow writers are. So yeah, so I'm going to read quickly. I'll read the first chapter of Still Here, which is short, and then I'll pass the mic to Samantha, and then if you have questions, you can ask away. So Still Here, third book in the series. This book came out in July. And so Claire, at the start of this book, she is now searching for Malcolm, who, if you've read the first 2 books, you find out very early in the first book, is the person who hired her to search for missing people. And now he himself cannot be found. She doesn't know where he is. So the first chapter in this book is actually, in each of the books we started differently. So in Still Mine, it starts with a letter from one character to another, and you don't know who the letter is to or from. Still Water just starts, right, like hits the ground running, chronological order. And what I did with Still Here, sort of playing with different forms of beginning, is I plucked a chapter, a very short chapter, from the almost very end, like the last 50 pages or 40 pages of the book, and took out the sort of identifying features and dropped it into the beginning. So this takes place on Saturday and then immediately jumps to 4 days earlier. So it's sort of like a hint of where Claire ends up at the end of the book. Claire blinks and pats at the back of her head. Warmth. She looks down at her fingertips, red with her own blood. Strange, she thinks, I feel no pain. The room takes shape. Claire sits in an empty bathtub, clothes on. The bathtub is at the center of the room. This bathroom is airy, too big, everything white, an open shower. The window over the vanity looks out to a sharp blue sky, too bright. Claire shifts her position and cranes to check behind her. The pain comes, her skull throbbing. Yes, Claire thinks, this place, of course. I know where I am. The bathroom door is closed. Claire leans back against the tub and closes her eyes to stave off a dizzy spell. She remembers it was a strike to the head. There are voices outside the bathroom door. Claire can't decipher how many. She works to pull herself up so she is sitting on the edge of the bathtub. Two voices, a man and a woman's. The man's voice is so acutely familiar that it brings a stabbing pain to Claire's chest. He is here. Of course he is here. Of course they are here together. A small laugh escapes Claire. This is what you get, she thinks. After everything that's happened, everything you've done, this is how it ends. The bathroom door cracks open. Claire stands still in the bathtub. She must steady herself. She must hold straight. Claire, he says, pressing through the half-open door. Claire? Claire squeezes her eyes closed, then pops them open to regain her focus. He is smiling too kindly. He holds a gun loose in one hand. Are you hurt? He asks. I didn't mean to hurt you. Does he look different? He's grown a beard, put on some weight. There's a deadness in his gaze. He steps forward and reaches out to take her by the arm. When Claire recoils, he frowns playfully. Don't do that, Claire. You've got nowhere to go. This is finally over. I'm here. It comes back to Claire now. This morning, dawn. She was alone, and then he was there. Oh, wow, he says, reaching this time for her hair. You're still bleeding. Don't touch me, Claire says, a hiss. Come on, he says. This doesn't have to end terribly, does it? Who else is here, Claire asks. Who's here with you? But she need not ask. She knows. The blood drips from her hair and travels in a stream down her spine. It takes all her effort not to sway. Claire closes her eyes again. She must find a way out. You owe me the truth, he says. Don't I deserve the truth? The truth. Claire doesn't answer him. She knows she's in danger. They will not let her out of here alive. She needs to focus, but she's dizzy. Her thoughts churn too quickly. The truth. He smiles at her expectantly. Anger whirls in her instead of fear. Anger that she didn't grasp the lies she was told, for trusting those she should never have trusted. Anger at herself for opening that door when she did. That's it.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, Sam.
Yeah, Samantha Bailey is next, who is the #1 best-selling author of Woman on the Edge, a Toronto-based novelist, journalist, and freelance editor. Her work appeared in Now magazine, The Village Post, and Oxford University Press. She is the co-founder of Book Buzz, a promotional and interactive author-reader event held in New York City and Toronto. Her debut psychological thriller, Woman on the Edge, became the #1 Toronto Star and Globe and Mail bestseller. It was the December Fiction Book of the Month at Indigo and Shoppers Drug Mart, January Book Lovers Pick. So everybody, Samantha and Bailey.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Colleen, for inviting us here. Amy, I'm mesmerized by your writing, and so while you were reading, it brought me back to that book. I love that. I love the whole series, and I love that book so much. I just wanted to say that. So I'm in that book. My head is in your book. So it's always so interesting to me to hear another author's journey, because Amy's journey to publishing and everything that happened is so wildly different from my own, that it really goes to show that no path is the same. You know, no journey is the same, no path is the same. And, you know, when you look at everyone who seems like an overnight success on social media, generally it can't be further from the truth. My own journey, that can't be further from the truth. So Woman on the Edge, which is here, I don't have as nice a background as Amy does, so I have the screen in my book. Woman on the Edge is actually the 5th book that I have written. So debut really means traditionally published debut, but certainly not the first book I wrote, not the first book to go on submission. So I'll start way back at the beginning. When I was 10 years old, I submitted my first story to a publisher, and it was my first rejection. So I learned very, very young how hard this business is, and that you just have to keep going. And so I did. And when I was 29 years old, I wrote my first full-length novel, which was a rom-com. And immediately I landed a New York City agent, and I thought, I'm the overnight success story. I'm going to, you know, get an editor. I'm going to New York, like Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City. I'll have my Cosmo in hand, signing books at a bookstore. I had it all planned out. We went on submission. This is my former agent and I. We went on submission with that rom-com or chick lit, whatever you know you want to call the genre. And it was right when chick lit died. There was even you know, a massive headline: "Chick lit is dead." And we submitted my book right after the funeral. So obviously, so that was, you know, completely rejected across the board. And I decided, I love rom-com, I'm gonna write another one. Let's try this again. A glutton for punishment, let's try this again. So I wrote another rom-com, and my agent again, my former agent, we submitted it again, and it got rejected again. And at that point, I thought, okay, I need to change tacks here. There's something that's not quite working. And I dreamed so much of seeing my book on a shelf. I dreamed that was the ultimate dream way back then, was to walk into a bookstore and to see my book on the shelf. So my agent and I amicably parted ways, and I you know, took some time to figure out what I was going to do. And I'd always been drawn to really dark fiction, light fiction as well, but my soul is of a darker writer. And so I began to write darker women's fiction. And I then spent the next, probably 8 years trying to find another agent for 2 other books. So I'd written 2 other books. I came close, but nothing was happening. I was getting very encouraging feedback. I, you know, at that point was publishing articles, publishing pieces in magazines and newspapers. I knew I had something, and what I needed to find was the right story. And so I started, you know, looking for that right story, and I would pour through newspaper articles and I'd pour through, you know, anything that was dark and fascinating to me, but I wasn't finding it. And then one day, probably 7 years ago now, I was standing on a Toronto subway platform. And I was just standing there getting on the subway. And I saw a woman holding her newborn. And she was standing very close to the edge. And if you've taken the TTC and the Toronto subway, the platforms are very narrow. We have no barriers. Already at that time, I would lean myself against the wall, and now I like hug the wall. No, not now, because I haven't been on a subway in 7 months. But back then, that day, the woman was close to the edge, and I looked at her, and in her, I recognized the days when I had newborns, especially with my first child, my son, who is now 13. My daughter is 10. And I saw the stress, I saw the exhaustion, I saw, you know, what it felt like when you had a newborn or, you know, a small child, and you've got the diaper bag and the stroller and you're sweating and you just don't want that child to start screaming, and there's, you know, you don't know what you're going to do. And then, like a lightning bolt, I thought, what if this woman walked up to me and said, "Take my baby"? And I had an empty gum pack in my purse, one of those Excel gum packs, and I opened it up and I took my, you know, trusty pen that I always carried, and I scribbled the premise down, and my thoughts got darker and they got darker. This poor woman, who was standing, you know, on the edge of the platform, who has no idea what I'm doing writing this story. And then the train came, and the woman got on, and she was snuggling her baby, and she looked content, and she was smiling, and I think I must have projected all, you know, my dark writerly thoughts onto this woman. So she was fine, and I had a story. And I went home that night, and I started writing. And it took a year. Generally, at that point, my drafts would take about a year, because I wasn't on deadline and nobody seemed to want them up until that point. So I had all the time in the world. However, at that point, I must have been around 40. So it was, I mean, it was 17 years before my, you know, first novel was on a bookshelf. Anyway, I went home. I spent a year writing that book. And I decided this time I was going to narrow my agent search. Previously, I had probably queried every agent in existence. So like any agent, they'll probably know my name, or maybe they've forgotten me. But my own current agent, I queried her 4 times. This was the 4th book that I had sent her, because Jenny Bent is my agent of the Bent Agency, and she's extraordinary. And so I queried probably about 12 agents. And I got many full requests, meaning the agents wanted to see the full manuscript. And I thought, okay, I have something. So here we go. I have something after all these years. And so what I realized was traditional publishing, because it's also a business, it has to be a business, is so much about the hook, really. A lot of it is about having a high concept idea. With commercial fiction, I think literary fiction is so different. But with commercial fiction, it's something generally that you want to be able to pitch in 1 or 2 sentences, like a movie log line. And so I thought, okay, I have that. I have this story. But that story was not a thriller. It was actually dark women's fiction, very, very dark women's fiction. At the end of querying, I had 2 agent offers, and for the first time in my life, I had to choose between 2 phenomenal agents. I was shocked. I actually thought I would love to be in that position, but I hated it. I didn't want to turn someone down. I didn't want to have to decide, you know, who I wanted to steer my career forward. In the end, it was Jenny's vision that clinched it because Jenny said to me, I think this should be a thriller, and I will help you with that every step of the way. And it was like she saw into my soul because I'd wanted to write a thriller forever. I had been reading mysteries and thrillers for as long as I could remember, but I was very scared because I knew the amount of work that was going to go into it, and I didn't know if I had it in me. Um, Perhaps if I had known how much work actually ended up going into it, I might have run for the hills because in the end, it turned out to be 3.5 years of revisions with my agent. Yeah, so 3.5 years, and not full on writing. I mean, we had wait times in between of months, where I was revising and then she was editing. But in the end, we probably tore down and rebuilt that book 20 times before it even went on submission. I will never forget the final tiniest little tweaks. My agent is extremely editorial. So tiny little tweaks were at the end, and I have scratched my eyeball. I cannot see. It hurts so much, and I was just powering through, trying to get it ready for submission because it was also around the time of the Frankfurt Book Fair. And I actually received foreign offers before North America. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that that would happen. To date, there are going to be 9 translations of the book. It's already come out in Poland, Spain, and the Czech Republic, and it still boggles my mind. And then my agent and I were discussing North America, and I said, Simon & Schuster Canada. She was like, okay. That's interesting. She's a New York-based agent, and she's like, all right, well, they have some phenomenal books. So let's discuss which authors at Simon & Schuster Canada. And I said, well, I know Marissa Stapley and Amy Stewart. I love their books. They are friends. And I know that their editor is exceptional. I can see it in the books. Before I went on submission, I would go down to Simon & Schuster Canada on King Street, and I would run my fingers along the gold, sign on the door. And so I think I owe, I don't know, Amy and Marissa, my book deal perhaps. So thank you very much. So my editor, Nita, she said yes to reading it. And then she said yes to acquiring it. And then we went through actually those revisions, because I'd gone through so much. They weren't as intense, but we ended up cutting 80 pages from the book. So in the end, 80 pages cut. The book came out. It was on the shelf. Indigo chose it as a December fiction book pick, which I mean, all of this is such a dream, and still doesn't feel real. And when I saw the wall of it at Indigo, I think I may have screamed. I may have frightened small children. I definitely made it very known that I was very excited and just so incredibly grateful to everyone. The Canadian readers have embraced me, bookstagrammers, librarians. I can't even find the words to thank everybody for changing my life so completely. It makes me teary to think about it. And then the writer community, back to what Amy said, really are like family. We want the best for each other. Again, yes, during this pandemic, to do events with my author friends, it's very comforting to know that we're all pushing each other, that we all believe in each other, one word at a time. We're all now trying to write our next book. So I'm working on my next book, and we're really there for each other. It's a really special, beautiful community, and we're very open to other authors as well. So, don't ever be shy to reach out to us, and don't ever worry about doing that, because we're here. We all started at the beginning, and we all embrace each other. And now I'm going to read. So I'm going to read the first chapter, which is very, very short, of the book. The first chapter, a lot happens. It sets the stage for the entire book. And I'm just going to jump in because from the synopsis on the back, it is a lot of what begins in this first chapter. And I also apologize, I'm wearing contact lenses. Normally I wear glasses because I'm really vain. And Amy, I've been watching myself this entire time. So I'm gonna have to like bring the book back and forth to make sure that I can read it. Okay. All right, chapter 1, Morgan. Monday, August 7th. Take my baby. I flinch at the brittle, scratchy voice. I'm standing on the subway platform, as I do every day after work, waiting for the train to come. I used to try to smile at people, but I'm warier now. Ever since my husband Ryan died, no one knows how to act around me, and I don't know how to act around them. I usually keep to myself, head down, which is why the voice surprises me. I look up. I thought the woman was talking to a friend, but she's not. She's disheveled, wearing faded black yoga pants and a stained white t-shirt. She's alone, and she's talking to me. She clutches a sleeping baby to her chest with one arm. She knows she has my attention now. She presses up against me, and my purse bangs into my side. Then she digs sharp nails into my bare wrist. Please take my baby. Icy fingers of fear run up my back, despite the sweltering heat inside Grand State Station. The woman is on edge, and so am I, literally at least. I always stand on the edge of the platform so I can be first on the train. One hard push is all it would take for me to fall onto the tracks. As bleak as the last 18 months have been, no matter how ostracized I've become after Ryan's suicide, I've made a new life for myself. I don't want it to end here. I gently extract my arm from her tight grip. Sorry, could you? She steps even closer to me, so close that I'm on the blue strip. Her eyes are wild, lips so bloody and raw like she's been chewing on them. She clearly needs help. I pull my long black hair around my face, lower my gaze to the gray speckled tiles and say, we should step back a bit, here. I put a hand out to guide her away from the edge, but she won't move. She's making me so nervous. As a social worker, I recognize the signs of distress, signs I should have noticed in Ryan. If I hadn't been the loyal, obtuse, willfully blind wife I never thought I'd become, my husband might have turned himself in and gotten help before it was too late. He might have realized that even though he'd be found guilty of embezzlement, there were worse things to lose, like life itself. If I'd noticed anything ahead of time, I might not be paying for the crimes I didn't even know he'd committed until he was dead. I might even be a mother myself now, like this woman in front of me. She looks awful. Clumps of matted dark curls stick out haphazardly from her scalp, as though her hair has been hacked with a chainsaw. I look away quickly. I've been watching you, she says to me in a strangled voice. She squeezes the sleeping baby so tightly, too tightly, and I fear for the safety of the child. The woman's eyes, ringed with such dark circles, it's like she's been punched, flick back and forth. Are you looking for someone? Is someone supposed to meet you here? Then I curse myself for getting involved when I should just give her my boss Kate's number at Haven House, the women's shelter I work for. I'm not the lead counselor and head advocate at the shelter anymore. I've been demoted to office manager. I wish I'd never met Ryan. I wish I'd never fallen for his crooked smile and self-deprecating humor, and I have no recourse. I still have a job. I did nothing wrong, yet I lost so much, including everyone's faith in me, my faith in myself. She is not my client to counsel. Who am I to counsel anyone? Her haunted eyes land back on me, and on her gaunt face is a look of pure terror. Keep her safe. The baby is fast asleep, her tiny nose and mouth pressed too closely to her mother's chest. She's unaware of her mother's suffering. I feel myself unwittingly absorbing this woman's pain, even though I have enough of my own to contend with. I'm about to give her the shelter phone number when she speaks again. I've been watching you for a long time. You seem like a nice woman, kind, smart. Please, Morgan. My head jolts back in shock. Did she just say my name? It's impossible. I've never seen her before in my life. The woman kisses her baby's tufts of hair, then stares at me again with those piercing blue eyes. I know what you want. Don't let anyone hurt her. Love her for me, Morgan. I know what you want? How can you possibly know anything about me, I say, but my voice is drowned out by an announcement to stay back from the platform's edge. The woman's cracked lips move again, but I can't hear her over the wind roaring through the tunnel. I'm truly panicked now. Something about all of this just isn't right. I feel it in my gut. I need to get away from this woman. People surround us, but they don't seem to notice that something strange is going on here. They are commuters in their own world, as I was just a few minutes ago. The woman's eyes sweep the platform once again. Then her arms reach out. She launches her baby toward me. My hands catch the infant by instinct. I look down at the child in my arms and I tear up. The yellow blanket she's wrapped in is so soft against my skin, the baby's face serene and content. When I look back up at her mother a second later, the train is shrieking into the station, and that's when she jumps. Thank you.
That is a good first chapter.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for these ladies? They told us a lot about process and the publishing journey they've been on. Want to unmute yourselves and ask away?
I have a question for Sam to start off. You were sort of talking about, you know, the amount of time you spent on the book, and in terms of the number of drafts and redrafts. Do you think that the success of the book is directly related to that time and the care that was taken? Like in terms of, would it have been, was it necessary to take that much time in order for it to be that much of a success?
Such a good question that no one's ever asked. I don't know. It's very hard to tell truly the key to the success of a book. I'm going to have to say that Indigo is a huge factor. I owe Indigo so much to have your book on a wall at Indigo. You know, I don't know how I got that, and I'm so humbled by it. So that was a factor. And then, of course, Simon & Schuster Canada has a phenomenal publicity and marketing team, like phenomenal. Amy can attest to that too. So I don't know. I think for me, it was necessary to go through all those drafts to really get at the core of the story, the characters' arcs. I'd never written a thriller before. And the type of book that it was, I felt the pace needed to be so precise. Every word, I mean, they all do, but because this is quite a fast-paced book, and because there were so many changes made from that first draft, even just taking it from dark women's fiction to a thriller, I think that was all necessary. So I don't know. I don't think every author has to go through years and years of drafts to be able to be successful. So to that, I say no. Me personally, maybe I did.
Well, the reason I asked is it's just, you know, I mean, Amy even referenced it, you know, authors are under so much pressure now to produce books once a year or, you know, even faster than that, right? And I just, you know, I think about this all the time, whether or not it's sort of undermining the quality of the books that are being pushed out because there is just so much pressure on authors.
I do think there is something I'll say back to the first question, then to the second, and then I'll let maybe Amy wants to answer as well. I don't know, but the first part of that is I think it's so important to be open to feedback. I think you need to be so open to feedback to take those critiques, to have a really strong skin and to trust and respect the people who are editing for you. That's such a huge part of the process. I think when it comes to a debut, you have the luxury of time. Like I said, I wasn't on a deadline. I could have taken 10 years, just by myself before an agent. And my agent didn't rush me. My agent was really about making this the best book it could possibly be. And it will always be so important to me for it to be the best book it can possibly be. But I think I've learned so much from that first book to the second. And so I think when someone's on a book at your schedule, at that point, I think, or a book, every 2 years, that we find ourselves in a rhythm without a pandemic, because with the pandemic, that's all I have to say. But I think that we learn so much. We have built our critique partner and beta reading community. We've established stronger relationships with our editors and our agents, so that I just think the whole process, that more can be done in less time. I think. I don't know if Amy wants to jump in or.
Yeah, I mean, I think a book a year is dependent on your sort of life situation, and just some writers are capable of like more productivity. They can write 2,000 words a day, whereas others, that's just not possible. I think for like my sort of thought about that is, people who are prolific and successfully prolific in part are so because they are good students of the craft. And our mutual editor Nita is like a drill sergeant type teacher, right? So she's like super intense, and I mean this like the best way possible. She's extremely intense, and also like just she sort of, the way that she delivers feedback allows you, there's a sort of intensity to it, like I said, but also like a consistency in that she's finding your patterns and what you tend to do either scene to scene or in your plot or whatever. And so if you take it upon yourself to be a good student, then you can learn those patterns and avoid them. So just as an example, like I had a pattern, which I still have, of like easing my way into and out of a scene. So I'll write a scene that's like, oh, Claire walks into a room and she notices a painting on the wall, and then she and then then there's a bang, and then same thing on the way out, where she fires a gun and like kills a bird, and then like wanders off and looks at the sunset, and Nita would be like, okay, start the scene at the bang, no one cares about the painting, and you end the scene at when she fires the gun, no one cares about the sunset. And I think like I still write that stuff, because for me it's about finding the beginning of the scene and finding the end. But before I give it to Nita, I will like contract it myself. And so, the feedback that I've been very lucky to get from her on the subsequent books is that my first drafts have been, I think slightly stronger every time, because I'm learning. I'm trying to be a student of the craft. And I think with thrillers in particular, there are certain sort of beats you have to hit and things that you have to avoid in order to keep up with the pacing. There's lots of room to play and try to do things differently, but you are sort of beholden to some degree to elements of the genre. So I just think that my advice to anyone who's entering the publishing industry is like, behave like a straight A student. And that's like the teacher speaking, like do what your teacher says. And then when it's time to work with publicity, like do what they say. And like, I had it in my calendar for some reason, because I don't know, COVID is my excuse for everything, that this event was at 10 a.m. and then some part of me was like, why would it be at 10 a.m.? I should check that. And so I double checked yesterday, which I know now because I am a little bit of an airhead recently, to double check everything because I don't want to be the person who, either shows up at 10 a.m. or worse, shows up at 7 p.m. for a 10 a.m. event. So I think you just have to be a good student, and then that not only makes the process faster, I don't think it's ever easier. It might get faster. And then also just builds goodwill. And, one thing about the industry is that with your publishing, publicity and marketing and sales team have a massive amount of influence over how your book goes. So it's really good to have them on your side, and getting them on side is all about just being that straight A student. So I think you can write a book a year. I can't, but I can write a book every 2 years, not every year.
That's why I'm getting myself a writing mentor, because I feel like I'm going to keep spinning my wheels in the same place unless I do something to move forward a little faster.
Yes. And like Sam said, you have to be able to accept feedback, and that doesn't mean that you have to listen to everything that somebody says about your book. But the relationship that Nita and I have developed now is that if I don't agree with her about something that she suggested, or I don't like what she suggested, or I don't feel she's right, that I'd better be able to advocate for my version of things. So I'd better be able to say, no, I don't think we should cut that character, or I don't think that we should cut that scene, or I don't think that we should do this. And sometimes I try to advocate and she just like beats me down, and then I realize that I'm wrong and I do cut the scene. But sometimes I convince her, no, this is what I'm going for. And then what it ends up being is that I'm going for something that I just haven't achieved yet.
Right.
And having that person who's questioning you, and basically my rule of thumb is if I can't advocate for something strongly enough, then it doesn't belong in the book.
Exactly. My rule was always, I'm also an editor for other authors. My rule was, if you have to explain it to me, it shouldn't be there, because you can't explain it to the reader. And so I think that goes back when you were saying, like, there's something there, you're just not there yet. So sometimes you need to talk it out, and you need the team, or you need a mentor.
Well, that's good advice for those of us in critiquing groups.
Yes.
If we can't explain it to each other, that's like our first step, right?
Yes, for the most part, like Amy said, you don't need to listen to everything, and you do have your own gut feeling about it in your own soul, but it might be that there's something there, you're just not there, that you're scratching at the edges of it, but you're not there yet, and it's okay to ask for help to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So just like as one example of that, in all the books, but in the first book in particular, Claire refers to Grace, who is her childhood friend from her hometown, and she refers to her in backstory and memories. And Nita, my editor, was like, Grace has no purpose in the story, you have to cut her. And I felt like she really did have a purpose, but the issue was, as Samantha said, I found myself being like, well, I want Grace to be a foil. She kind of like, Claire sees what could have been with her life by looking at this friend who was more successful. And then Nita's like, that sounds great, but that's not what you've done. So you have to figure out how to do that. So I'm explaining it to her, and she's, as Sam said, if you have to explain it to me, then it's not in the book. So you got to put it in the book. And that kind of conversation can be so helpful to your process.
Yes, having someone, I have to say, like Nita, this will be all about Nita, because she's incredible. She's a brilliant teacher. She's a brilliant guide. So I think finding, when you're looking for someone to edit, I mean, she's been doing this for years and years and years, and this is her, her I think, life's calling on top of writing. But I think finding somebody who can be tough and honest and will tell you like it is, and then also can see the story, what's not in the story that does need to be in the story, I think is also really helpful. Finding those key readers to help you.
I just want to tell you one more quick story about Nita, because you'll find
Nita,
no,
if you're
just
watching.
about no Nita. So
Roseanne has a
Nita, she's a writer as well, which I didn't really know. I knew that she did ghostwriting and whatever, but just to talk about like being the straight A student. So Nita was kind of writing. She's an editor, very successful, but also writing. So about a year ago, she was at a hotel in London and sort of had this idea. She saw a maid. She came into her hotel room and saw the maid, the person, the cleaner, folding a pair of her pants and in the room. And she thought, oh my God, like that's kind of weirdly intimate. This woman's like folding my pants. And so this idea popped into her head about, these hotel maids and sort of all of the access and insight they have into the hotel residents' lives. So what she did is she then studied the market and said, okay, what's happening? What does the market need? Like book market, the industry, and it was what's going to be the next big wave. And she determined that it was going to be this sort of cozy mystery, like, sort of like the Murder, She Wrote, like not that intense, not that dark, kind of like this heroine who's got this, it's sort of like a mystery with, there is like a dead body, but it's also this lighthearted romp in a way. And she wrote the book that she studied the market and she wrote the book. And in what, May, June?
I don't know, like the announcement in Publishers Marketplace. I think you wrote me, we're like, what?
Yeah, she like multi-million-dollar book deal. Like it, the kind of thing that happens twice a year around the world.
I
like
level of million. Was it multi-million?
Oh yeah, she got like 35 territories, a massive film deal.
I guess you added up.
Auction in North America, like crazy, off the charts.
Yeah,
so
I better get an arc of that book.
So there you go. That's our last Nita story. Now we can move on.
We love her.
Samantha.
Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to ask you both a question about agents. So if you have a book that has been published and you had it published, it was accepted, and you didn't have an agent, but now you want to pursue other possibilities for this book, and would you recommend, what could you suggest or recommend for an agent? Like, would agents look at a book that's already been published, but that perhaps to look at other film
was it published? Like, did you self-publish it?
No.
So where was it? Published with a small press?
So it's a mid-sized press.
Okay. So here's what I would say, because I've done self-publishing, and I was looking into whether or not a traditional publisher would ever pick up my self-published books. So from my experience and for what I have seen, is unless a book is a pretty massive bestseller, it's unlikely that a traditional, like one of the big five or whatever you want to call it, one of the big five will publish it, because they generally want all new content. And an agent, they could represent that book with the mid-sized publisher if you don't have an agent, because they could possibly get foreign rights for it, film. If you don't have audio, you could get audio. So there are many other paths. But I would say, from my own knowledge and experience, so I could be wrong, that most agents would like new content, and they'll probably ask you, what else are you working on? And did you have, I'm assuming this is yours, did you have a fair-sized audience and fair sales for the book?
Well, it was published in 2018. It won several. It won an international gold IPI award, Publisher Book Award for historical fiction, and it was shortlisted for several literary awards. And yeah, so I was just curious as to how to proceed.
Yeah, I would say, sorry, go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to say, and by the way, I do recognize your name. I recognize your name. I was going to ask why you would want an agent for that book as opposed to something new.
Well, thinking about my journey with this book and my dreams with this book is I would like to see it developed in as many ways as possible. So, I was even considering adapting it as a screenplay, for example. I just see other potential avenues for it, and I would like to pursue them.
Well, I mean, just to sort of add to what Sam says, like, agents don't like generally to take things on where they can't benefit from the sale. So, the fact that so I don't know what your contract says, if it's world rights that you gave to the publisher or what, but that would impact it. I think that because you have a traditionally published book where you had obviously some success, I don't think you'd have trouble getting an agent, because you have a track record that the vast majority of writers don't. But I would suggest that, like, I switched agents, and my new agent is not the agent on record for any of the still books. But we do have foreign rights that she can continue to sell, but she was more signing me on, like, my prospects down the road, future books. So I do think, like, if you're going to start looking for an agent, you do want to have another, like, it can't be on the grounds of, I want to continue to sort of see what I can get from this book. That might be something your agent does take on, but I think you need to go in with, like, I'm moving forward, I have other books in me, because most agents don't want, it's kind of like you're getting remarried and like you've already got a kid, like, that person will raise your kid, but it's not their kid, right? So
that was good.
Yeah, it's a good. So so I would just make sure you have, and it doesn't even have to, it could just be an idea, but that you have more in you than just, I don't want to say just, but then a book that's already published.
Then an outline, because they do generally want to represent your career and earn from their clients. What I would say is, does your publisher have foreign rights? Did you give them world rights?
Well, I would like. I don't have, the book hasn't been hasn't been translated yet, but they do have agents, for foreign rights.
Okay, so they have. So I can understand. I so understand after 5 books, one self-published one. When you have a book that is obviously really good and has won awards and probably has excellent critical reviews, that is frustrating when it's not everywhere, and that you may have to move forward from it. I do know it is very frustrating, but I think, yes, like Amy said, it's a long game. Publishing is a long game, so it's never one book. And there are a lot of people, their first book doesn't do well, but oh my God, they hit the New York Times bestseller list with their second. They put out a series of 3 books, and Kobe Smulders is going to, like, by the way, Amy, like, I keep telling you, that is just, I love Kobe Smulders. I want to see that series.
Me too.
I know. but that's it. It's a long game. So I think, like Amy said, yeah, I would put an outline together of another book, and then put the feelers out and let them know. They're going to ask your sales numbers on that book, and yeah, all the awards. Gather all that information you have, and make a list of it, like all, the best critical reviews, any trade reviews that you have that are good, anything, all the awards, like I said. And then that will help you gain the forward momentum that you want.
Thank you both.
Sure. Anytime.
Okay, Bruce, Marilyn, Frank, you have anything for them before we move forward?
Not really. It's a lot of information to absorb at once.
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah,
I think it's also, we don't talk to other people but our families very much.
Lately, yeah.
So much was said when my questions was answered in the process. And I just came off a 2.5 hour Zoom meeting, so I think that I chaired, so I think I'm kind of
Zoomed out.
You're all zoomed out, yeah.
Yeah.
My brain's not moving too quickly.
Okay, well, that's good.
But the information was great. I really appreciated hearing all that you said. And I write some stuff that's on the darker side and more towards the thriller, but I'm primarily short stories. My only novel attempt was done years ago, and it was ahead of its time. I had a New York agent look at it and said, well, you didn't even really look at it. He looked at it. It was about the Middle East around the time of the Gulf War. And it took place, it was a global intrigue thriller. And he said, this takes place in the Middle East. There's not a it could be the best thing written. There's not a publisher in the United States who will touch it right now.
Oh, right. So, but now?
But now, well, now I think I've passed the wave. Life got in the way and it sat on the shelf. But 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I might have done something with it. Everything on TV is that type of book.
Timing is so much in this business. It really, really is.
So I may rework it anyway. There's still stuff going on.
Seems like it is worth reworking.
Yeah. But
yeah, he's read some of it to our group, and it definitely is worth reworking.
Right.
Thank you for that encouragement.
So yeah, do it.
I'm too busy trying to self-publish my short stories, my picture book, and my middle grade YA book.
Self-publishing is so much work. It is. Like, it's a whole different ballgame. It is.
It is. I guess that's the only way I publish my books, and yeah, it's a lot of work beyond the writing and the rewriting and the critiquing and the rewriting again.
And the marketing.
It's everything. You're everything. You're formatter, designer, or you're paying for somebody to do that all. It's also a really expensive venture. You don't know if you'll make a return on. So it's really
So I have a question for you, Sam, in that context then. So you've done both, obviously. And so even though the demands on you in terms of marketing and publicity for Woman on the Edge, is the self-publishing even more work than sort of those demands?
Oh, it's so different because, self-publishing, I mean, it was all up to me. It was all up to me, but I had built this amazing community, and you had the book buzz parties, this reader, author party where we'd all get together and promote each other, and it was wonderful. And I definitely want to do that again. I wanted a partner so much. I'd always had an editor, so I was never going to just self-edit my books. There was no way, even as an editor, that I could do that. I need an editor really bad. Now, I will not bring it too much back to Nita, but Nita is like she's my goddess. So but I wanted a partner. And the marketing and the promo, like I said, it still boggles my mind where I am today, that people want to listen to me, is so astounding that I will do anything that anyone, within reason. but that, I'll do anything. And so to have my publicist, Jillian Levick is my publicist, and Alexandra Bolsterly is my marketing lead, and then Felicia Kwan for the US, they do so much for me. Certain events, people reach out to me, and I love when people reach out to me. But they do so much for me. They set up these incredible things that I could never do on my own, and could never have done on my own. I think self-publishing, the advantage to self-publishing are the royalties, but then it's the sales. Again, I could never have achieved the sales in self-publishing. However, I have friends. I have a friend, Josie Brown. She is self-published now. She was with the Big Five. She is a huge best-selling author, and she is now self-published. And what she says to me is the key to all success is your mailing list, which I don't have yet, which I need to work on in a newsletter. So she said it's the mailing list. And so I think, back then, I self-published in 2012. Had I known all that maybe the marketing, it would have gone better. The book did okay for something I did all by myself. But no, I personally could never have achieved what I achieved. And the work is, it's so different. The work is so different.
That mailing list is really hard. It's really hard to grow. I mean, it takes like a part-time job onto itself to do that, which is nice when you guys are published by a publishing house that has the team behind you. Whereas when you're on your own, it's tough. So
yeah, self-publishing.
You're a business person, and a writer.
You're everything.
Yeah,
you're your own entity. I think what is more difficult about traditional publishing is the speed of which you have to do things. But again, in self-publishing, I know people who have to put out 4 books a year so that they can make it a full-time career. Right. The idea of putting 4 books out a year, like I can't I think Amy and I would both go crawl under a rock and stay there forever.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting to a little late here, or not super late, but so we're going to start the open mic. Before that, we have a sponsor this month, which helps us support our authors. So I'm going to say a little blurb about our sponsor, and then we'll move into the Q&A. Or not the Q&A, the open mic. So Jim Anderson Contracting Limited has over 10 years experience in renovations. They pride themselves in quality workmanship and have a keen eye for detail. If you're looking for a kitchen or bathroom reno, a deck or fence, get a free estimate from Jim Anderson Contracting. Landscaping, they do everything from stonework, driveways, walkways, and gardens to creating beautiful naturalistic ponds. They offer custom woodworking with a unique flair. So no job is too big or too small. It's jimanderson.ca or 705-321-2569. That's our sponsor. So we thank Jim Anderson for supporting our authors. And do we have any people for open mic? I know you're tired.
We have me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to call it a night.
Yep.
Do you? Okay. Well, thanks for coming, Marilyn.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Maybe you can read us a scene of your book next month.
I'll try.
Okay.
I'll put that down on my to-do list.
For sure.
So good night, everybody.
Night.
Night.
Go.
Okay, Frank.
Sure.
What do you got for us?
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. This is from the draft of a novel, Children of the Earth. The new house backed onto the Dudmeyer Creek Valley. Why 3 cents, Ewell said, leaning on the white metal-top table. Leaning farther, he looked alternately between 2 4-quart plastic yellow bowls their stainless steel soup ladles hanging off the sides. One bowl brimmed with a bright lemon drink. The other shone cherry red. Both drinks, an easy mix of store-bought crystals, sugar, and water. "'Cause they're 2 for a nickel," Teddy said. 2 wooden, slat-back folding chairs squatted at the table. The chair squeaked under Teddy Jordan in his navy beachcombers and private eyes hat. Teddy's sister, pudgy, dark-haired, olive-skinned Caroline, sat beside him, wearing a pink tank top over her sky blue bathing suit. "'Cause they're 2 for a nickel," Teddy said again. Ewell dug into the chest pocket of his new starched white short-sleeved cotton shirt. "I've only got 4. 2 for a nickel, Teddy," the budding businessman repeated without expression on his face or in his voice. 2 for a nickel or forget it. Teddy paused then, thinking, and said, "Give you 2 for free if you mind the stand for an hour." Ewell looked across the privet hedge at his Dudmeyer Crescent bungalow, like Teddy's and all the others on the street. Squat, red brick, front hall opening to a living room on the right. 2 bedrooms and a bathroom on the left. 1 bedroom on the back. Forced air heat, an oil furnace. Gravel drive, no garage. Ewell's kitchen on the rear and overlooking the valley. He could hear his mother's slight fawn-colored hair with a doe's fair skin and eyelashes, unpacking boxes. Sounded like glasses. "Got any brothers or sisters?" Teddy asked. "No, there's just me, so far anyway. My dad was overseas, war chaplain. Mom says maybe when we get settled. Maybe someday I'll have a sister like you. Here's the 4 cents. I'll mind the stand." "What school you going to, St. Andrews or Everest?" Teddy asked. Caroline, silent until now, watched her brother handle the new kid with ease, said, "He'll be going to Everest. He's not Catholic." Buzz, 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 Teddy's hands crisscrossed rapidly in front of Ewell's face. Suddenly, Teddy's bony finger dropped and jabbed Ewell hard in his soft belly flesh. "Wasp," he said. "I'll mind your stand. You take a hike," Ewell said. "I'll help my mother later." Teddy backed up a step and straightened. He wasn't used to such a firm response from other kids. The new boy was smart, and not one to be pushed around. Maybe his equal. Not the rough edges of the son of a working-class man like him, but no pansy either. Teddy rubbed the palms of his hands up and down over his chest, as if wiping off the fists that were so quick to clench and fight to stake out his territory, to maintain his power, his control on the street and in the schoolyard. Caroline looked at Teddy. She had never seen him back up so quickly in any standoff with another kid. Then she looked at Ewell, his face plain, no giveaway menace hidden deep inside, no clenched fists or tightened body ready to flee or fight. Nothing. Then she saw Ewell's eyes, blue as Lake Ontario on a bright summer's day, big and piercing right into Teddy as if looking through him, and without a doubt, projecting a determination unmovable. Even at her young age, Caroline could read people easily, and she could sense in those few moments Ewell was the kind who would die fighting for his beliefs. She knew this intuitively, and only in a sudden deep understanding too complex for her to articulate. Yet she knew. Ewell's head turned slightly to look at her, and those penetrating blue eyes narrowed as if to say, "You too, girl, don't push it." Then, "So what'll it be?" Ewell said. "Neither, nothing, everything," Teddy said quickly, his rapid mind pumping out nonsense and sense simultaneously. Feeling a strange bond, some form of unlikely kinship with this new boy, Teddy relaxed. Yule's eyes, and something almost imperceptible in him relaxed too. Been down in the valley yet? Teddy asked. Forget the stand. Let's go down there. We can squish tadpole guts, big ones. There.
Yay. Well done, Frank. It's usually music or a poem, so that was a nice change.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Well,
You,
thank you.
I felt like I was listening to that on the radio.
He's got a nice voice. He does.
Oh yeah, and anyway, I love that. Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Bruce, got anything for us this month?
I haven't really prepared, but I could read, if you'll give me 2 minutes to bring it up, the next part of my middle grade story.
Absolutely.
I think
I have not. Excuse me. I have nothing this month, so
it's
don't you guys.
it's been a while since I read the first chapter or part thereof. But I don't have this time, so you want to just give me kind of a beep at 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever you want to do. Just cut me off. Was that an okay? I've moved you out of the screen so I could read because I'm going to read off the screen.
Okay. Well, if you go too long, Colleen will mute you. Okay.
That sounds good. I'll just keep talking. I won't know. Okay, the background of the story, it's middle grade, maybe into lower end of YA, especially for slower readers. It's a mystery adventure sort of thing. 3 kids, twins, Matt and Ashley, and their best friend Sylvie, and they're on their way to her aunt's, Sylvie's aunt's cabin for midterm break, northeast of Winnipeg in Riding Mountain National Park. So a lot of the background things have been picked up, and from the beginning, you know that Matt has managed to get him and the others into trouble more than once in the past. So, chapter 2, My Buddy the Biker. Sylvie's dad, and Matt is the protagonist. Sylvie's dad dropped us off at the Winnipeg bus depot, a glass and metal building located at the edge of the airport. It was 10 in the morning and minus 12 Celsius. The pale blue sky didn't have a cloud in sight. We got out and walked to the back of the car. The trunk popped open, and Sylvie swung her mech camping backpack over her shoulder. I grunted as I took out my sister's oversized suitcase. It landed with a thud on the sidewalk. I put my backpack and duffel bag beside hers. Mr. Wallace chuckled. 2 bags, Matt? Usually it's the men who travel light. I held up the duffel bag. I packed lunch and snacks. You mean you packed the fridge? Ashley never missed an opportunity to comment about my eating habits. Mr. Wallace returned to the driver's door and glanced over the car roof. Sylvie, did you remember your wallet? Yes, Dad. I've got everything. See you in 9 days. Good. And remember, don't give Aunt Irene anything to worry about. Sylvie rolled her eyes but grinned. You can go now, Dad. We entered the bus depot and sat on the blue plastic seats that stood in rigid rows in the waiting room. I caught a few people watching us. I was used to it. The boys at school all thought Ashley and Sylvie were hot, although I never tell Ashley that. If people were to guess, they'd probably think Sylvie was my sister. I'm 5'9" and she's 5'8". We both have dark hair and brown eyes. She's the outdoors and sports type, like me. Ashley is only 5'2". She's smart and fun to be with, but her idea of an outdoor adventure is going to a strip mall. If Sylvie was feline, she'd be a mountain lion. Ashley, strictly house cat. I squirmed. You'd think they could have padded these seats. It's as uncomfortable sitting in church. Like you go to church, said Ashley. Sylvie pointed to a priest to roll over. The church came to us. I turned sideways to take a look. Ashley dug her elbow into me. Don't be so obvious, you'll think we're staring at him. We are staring at him, I said a little too loudly. We cracked up. Sylvie doubled over, fist against her mouth, trying to muffle her cackle. She has a distinctive laugh that is so weird it sets everyone off. It took a couple minutes before we managed to get back in control of our bodily functions. Sylvie leaned back in her chair, holding in her breath with her last few guffaws, when Ashley's back and shoulders jerked to attention as if Prince Harry had walked into the room. Oh my God, that woman who just came in, she's wearing a Chloe coat. A what? Sylvie squeaked out. It's stupidly expensive, not what you'd expect at a bus depot. I immediately lost interest and redirected their attention to the left. I think I found that special someone for Ash. A biker well over 100 kilos with a full sleeve of tats on his right arm was leaning against a pillar, picking at his fingernails. His belly stuck out from under a fleece-lined leather vest, rolled over a large belt buckle, and stretched the fabric of his black t-shirt. One side of his vest had Harley-Davidson crest, the other an Indian motorcycle insignia. His dark eyes leered out from beneath a black peaked cap. Cheeks and chin hid behind an untrimmed beard. Sylvie's eyes narrowed and her lips pushed out like she had bit into something rotten. He looks more like something from Duck Dynasty. She stood abruptly and pointed towards the rear doors. The driver's going to the bus. It's still 20 minutes to departure time, but let's be the first in line so we get good seats. We shivered outside for 10 minutes before the driver, sitting the whole time in the warm, idling bus, opened the doors for boarding. The girls grabbed the first row with a panoramic view of the front. I took the aisle seat immediately behind them, hoping to keep both it and the window seat to myself. We agreed to switch places in an hour. The rest of the passengers streamed on. The last to climb up the steps and poke his bushy head into the warm air was the biker. He stood there for a moment, scanning the full bus, then clomped down the aisle. I relaxed until a giant paw landed on the top of my seat. I looked up. Another paw clamped onto the back of Sylvie's seat, erasing any thought of escape I might have had. I tensed. The biker glared at me. The bus is full, he sniffed. So, bro, if that seat beside you isn't taken, looks like you and me are going to be traveling buddies. I got up and let him squeeze in. Leaning forward in the aisle, I whispered the girls. Switchy wants to enjoy his company when we switch seats. They pointed at each other and said, she will. The bus started out of the station. The biker cleared his throat, swallowed, and grunted. So you a student? Yeah. High school? Yeah. Ever been in trouble? A little. Do yourself a favor. Finish school, stay in your lane. Trouble ain't worth it. I got mixed up with some bad dudes and ended up in prison. Ever been in a prison? I looked at him like he was on drugs. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. As a visitor, I mean. No, neither way. I wanted my lack of prison experience to be perfectly clear. He got a little glassy-eyed, like he was recalling a vacation in Hawaii. I was in Stony Mountain Pen. What did you do? I immediately wished I hadn't asked. This conversation was getting way too friendly. Nothing much. Me and my buddies robbed some gas stations. He looked out the window. I'm not into that stuff now. I took some courses in the slammer, got my high school diploma, and found my calling. I felt my eyes involuntarily widen. You got religion? Nah, nothing like that. Since I had this natural knack of palming things, I decided to put the skill to good use. I learned magic. You're a magician? Even I heard the obvious doubt in my voice. He became surly. That's what I said.
Bruce.
Okay.
Yeah, I was waiting for a good time, but you're at 7 minutes, so.
That's a good time.
Well done.
Hang on. Oops. I think I lost the picture. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put in a little plug. Oh, there it is. Came back. I'll put it, since we're short on readers, I'll just put in a little plug. If you want to hear something else I've done, I read with the Muskoka Authors Association and their Tall Pines. Usually it's an event in person, but this year it's like everything else on the internet. So if you go to Bracebridge Library YouTube channel, Google it, and go in, there'll be a string of videos. and one grouping from that particular, from our particular group. You go down, you'll see my not quite smiling face, and you'll get about 8 to 9 minutes of my beginning of my short story, The Performer,
Nice.
Great.
which is 1850s England historical romance sort of thing. So there's the plug.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Nice. Maybe there's a link to that you can share on our Facebook page.
Sure, yeah, could do that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of there's a lot of people who didn't make it out tonight would probably love to see that and support you in that for sure.
Probably
Anybody else for open mic? No takers. Okay. So just a quick closing off. Next Word Up is November 12th. We have Candace Jane Dorsey and Ursula Flug. Candace Jane Dorsey is an internationally known and multi-award winning author of novels Black Wine and Paradigm of Earth, with an upcoming mystery series, The Adventures of Isabel, and a YA novel, The Story of My Life. Plus she's got books of poetry. She's a community activist. She sounds like a really interesting person. And Ursula Flug is an award-winning author and editor of 10 novels, novellas, edited anthologies, and short story collections. Her fiction has appeared in Canada, the US, and the UK. She's been in, this is one of the ones I listen to on a podcast, is Lightspeed magazine, Fantasy, Strange Horizons, which I also listen to, Postscripts, Leviathan, and Bamboo Ridge. So she's been a busy lady. And she's won small press awards abroad and been a finalist for the Aurora, Relit, and the KM Hunter Awards. So I'm looking forward to those two next month. If you want to take a look at and buy maybe Amy and Stuart's books, their links and their bios are on our website, wordupbarrie.com. And thanks to Rhubarb Media for sponsoring our hosting our website for us. If you know of anyone or you yourself want to help support the arts and our writers, we're looking for sponsors. Thank you, Word Uppers. You made this an amazing, amazing night, and thank you to our
Thank you
authors.
so much for having me. That was really fun.
It was really fun. Thank you. And again, thank you, Colleen, for reaching out and inviting me.
Mhm.
Yes.
This was wonderful. Thank you to, and for reading. Thank you so much to the
Yes.
authors who read.
Thank you.
Samantha. That was very good. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, everyone. Good night. Stay safe. Stay well.
Can I give
Thanks,
another plug before I go? Before you go? It's a really small writing group. I think or a contest, I made people aware of it. So it's not a big one, but next year, odds are good of getting something if you submit, if you're over 55. It's a seniors competition, and I came in, it's the Coldwater Legion runs it, trying to get involvement of seniors and in writing and activities. And so I came in first in my short story.
Yay.
Way to go.
Congrats.
Great.
That's great.
Or just had to plug myself.
You do. You
Anymore.
do have to plug yourself. That's great.
Okay.
Congrats.
So now we can say goodbye.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for coming out, and hopefully we'll see you online.
See you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye, guys.